Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Sobit ID here. Today's tutorial I'll be sharing with you guys how to cut and sew a silk skirt. And if that is what you're here for, make sure you stay to the end. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment in the comment section. And if today is your first time coming across the channel, don't forget to subscribe and join the family. Let's get started with the tutorial. So I'm working with 2.5 yards of duchess fabric, and if you're on a smaller size you should work with 2 yards unless your skirt is going to be longer. So what I have here is on fold is 1 yard 9 inches, so I'm going ahead to fold it in a bias. Okay, so just watch what I did there. I just get, fold it on into two, that's dividing the 2 yards into two, and then I'll get the edge and try to match the other end to it. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you watch closely you understand what I did there. So I'm just going to fold that and I'll cut out the remaining one. So if you're on a bigger side, you might want to fold on full bias like this, but if you're maybe smaller, you might just want to do half. So after cutting out the part I'll be using, because this fabric is very stressful, so I don't want to stress so much. This is what I have now. I'm going to be locating the part that is equivalent to my waist circumference. Okay, so I'm using my ruler to check the part that it is. Now we're not working with our actual waist circumference, so because we are working with elastic band for this, we will not be using our actual waist circumference, and you do not want to put your hip measurement or hip circumference on your waist because it's going to be too bulky. So what we are going to be doing is to minus 5 or 6 inches from our hip circumference, and then we'll divide it by 4. So if you minus 5 inches from your hip, anything you have, you divide it by 4 and add 1 inch to which, then put it on your waist. Okay, so that is our waist circumference measurement. Okay, now from the waist I'm going to come down by 8 inches, and then I'm going to be marking my hip circumference divided by 4 plus 1.5 inches. Okay, you can add 2 if you want, but for me I just wanted to have half an inch ease and 1 inch for my sewing allowance. So that's what I went ahead to do there, and I'll connect that to the waist. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark the skirt length I'll be working with, and I'm using 30.5, that's 30.5 inches, and that includes my hemming allowance, and I'm going to mark that all around, and I'm going to cut it out. But before we cut it out, I'm going to determine the hemline, that's the width, how wide I want my hemline to be. So you can either use any of this method. The first one is to mark your hip circumference first and then add additional 5 inches to it. Okay, or you can add 5 to 6 inches depending on how wide you want yours to be. But if you don't want it to be, if you want it to be more wide, you can go ahead and mark maybe 22, 21, depends on what you want, maybe 21, 22. Even if you even want it to be more bigger, you can go ahead and use more. Okay, so that's what you're just going to do. So for me, I think I marked 21 or 22, and I'm just going to connect it to the waistline, or to the to the hip line, sorry. And after doing that, this is what I have for the front and the back, and I'm just going to join the sides by 1 inch, which is my hemming, which is my sewing allowance, sorry. And I'll show you guys what I have. So I've gone ahead to sew by 1 inch, and this is what I have so far. As you can see, now we have to attach our waistband. Okay, so remember that the waist for the skirt is our hip minus 5 divided by 4 plus 1 inch. Well, we'll remove the 1 inch. Okay, but for the elastic band, what we're working with is our actual waist circumference minus 3 inches. So you can minus 2 to 3 or even 4, but you don't want to minus so much so that it will not end up gathering so much of the skirt waist and then making it look bulky. So we are trying to avoid it looking bulky. All right, so I minus my waist circumference is 37 minus 3 inches. That's what I have here, is 34 inches. So I'm going to sew that waistband. What I have there for my waistband is 34 inches. I'm going to sew it together, and then we are going to attach it to the waist of the skirt. Now before we do that, we need to get 4 corners of the waistband. Okay, so we can match it up with the 4 parts or 4 corners of the skirt as well. So I'm going to use my chalk and then indicate that. And yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to use that stitch part, that's the joint part, as the middle. Then I'm going to mark this point and then divide the waistband again and mark. So we'll get 4 points. So that is what we are just trying to do here. We'll get 4 points. All right, so I'm going to use my chalk to indicate that, and then I'm going to the stitch part, I'm going to join into the waist point, the waist joining as the first one, then the other part will also join into the other waist, the other side will join to the middle, the two middle. Okay, and that is how we're just going to do that. So after joining, just going to use my needle to, or my pin, sorry, to hold that down. And by the time you're done joining, you will notice that there is a little bit excess on the skirt. So when you're sewing, you're just going to stretch it out while you sew, and then it's going to gather up the excess. Okay, make sure you're sewing gently and sew by 0.25 or 0.25 to 0.5. You don't want to sew more than that. So just go ahead and do that gently. You see me taking my time, and as you're sewing, you're stretching the waistband so it can gather up the excess on the waist, the skirt waist. So after sewing, this is what I have. You can see it doesn't look too much, it looks mild. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is to turn the waistband inside. Okay, and then by the time, you can either decide to turn it and just stop stitch on the two sides, finish, or you can decide to do what I did here. So I'm going to use my pin to hold that side first, and I'm also going to turn the other side and also pin it. You can also do the same thing to the center front and the center back. I would advise you do that to the center front and center back, so it's easier for you to work with, and the gathers will be evenly proportioned or evenly distributed, sorry. So, and you're going to sew very close, or just sew on the band. You can sew on the band very close to the band, or anywhere you want to sew it. Just make sure you sew and is neat. Okay, let your arm be straight, and make sure that you're stretching out and it is evenly distributed. Please let everything be seamless and nice. So just going to do that and sew to the end, and after sewing that, I will show you guys what I have. So this is what I have after sewing. You go ahead and use steam iron to press it, and after pressing, you notice that the gathers will reduce a little. Okay, so this is what I have for the waist so far. We're going to go ahead and hem the skirts, and that is it for today's tutorial. Yes, thank you so much for joining. If you watched this point and you're not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe, like, and drop a comment in the comment section. Thank you so much for joining and watching to the end. And also don't forget to join our community where you can send your inspos or the styles you want us to recreate, and I'm always available to do that. Thank you so much for joining. See you in my next tutorial. Bye. Mwah.